Hi friends, my name is Becca and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time with us, I'm so glad that you are here. We focus on all things middle grade literature, specifically the first chapters of all your favorite middle grade novels. Today we are going to be reading the first chapter of The Hurricane Girls by Kimberly Willis Holt. She is a National Book Award winning author, so I am super excited to dive into this one. I'm going to start by reading you the inside front cover, which gives us a little bit of an excerpt on what this book is going to be about. Born in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, Greer, Joya Mia, and Kiki are 7th graders and the best of friends. After an accident leaves Greer's little sister paralyzed, Greer is forever changed by the experience and blames himself. Kiki and Joya Mia will do anything to help Greer let go of his emotional burden, and a plan is hatched to compete in a triathlon. Each girl will participate. Kiki will swim, Joya Mia will cycle, and Greer, if they can persuade her, will run, something she once loved to do. Set on the West Bank of New Orleans, this contemporary coming-of-age novel is a journey of growth, healing, and difficult transitions as the girls navigate their many life challenges, family trauma, body insecurity, and the conflict between ambitions and responsibilities. It's a powerful and enlightening exploration of how to surmount personal tragedy through friendship and forgiveness. All right, there is a little blurb here before the novel starts that I think is worth sharing. Some hurricanes blow through a land, shaking it up, bending trees, creating lakes and parks, and making rivers of streets, then exiting like a whisper. Others arrive casting rain and wind upon a place like an angry warrior trying to rob a foe of its heart. Hurricane Katrina was one such hurricane. A hurricane so fierce it broke the levee, destroying homes and businesses, and driving the New Orleans people away, scattering them to different lands. Lands without bayous or the big river that split the East Bank from the west. But even a hurricane with such force can't keep the heart of a well-loved city from beating. When the storm calmed, the people were pulled back like paper clips to a magnet, and they began to rebuild. Love and loyalty will do that. All right, and we are going to, there's actually another little introduction page here before the first chapter starts, so I'm going to read that too as well. Water, bayous, canals, even narrow ditches from rainwater formed the neighborhoods on the West Bank of New Orleans. Greer lived in Harvey, Joya Mia in Tarrytown, and Kiki in Marrero. They may never have met one another if they hadn't attended Spanish Oaks Charter Middle School, and they may never have been friends if it hadn't been for the Hurricane Project. The assignment required them to interview family members and friends about their experiences when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. Their history teacher had said, "It's an awesome idea since the majority of you were born that year, 2005. Most of the class didn't think it was such an awesome idea. They whined about their assigned partners, but not Greer, Joya Mia, and Kiki. Their own personal hurricane stories were completely different from one another's, but somehow the differences felt like puzzle pieces connecting perfectly together. They were unique from one another too. Greer with her serious, single-minded focus on track, Joya Mia's direct remarks, and Kiki's never-ending big ideas. But the girls shared similarities. They thought The Diary of Anne Frank was the most important book ever, that bananas were disgusting, and that crossing the Mississippi River to the East Bank was still exciting no matter how many times they'd done it. They each admitted to owning a box filled with Mardi Gras beads, even though they had no idea why they were collecting them. Their loyalty to one another came early, like whenever anyone mispronounced Joya Mia's name. Kiki and Greer told them sternly, "It's pronounced Joya Mia." Oops. By the project's due date, they were calling themselves the Hurricane Girls. That was last year in 6th grade. By summer, they'd become the best of friends, spending Saturdays at Oakwood Shopping Center or Greer's dad's movie theater, where they'd head to the dock afterwards, buy a snowball, and watch the Algiers ferry cross the river to the edge of the French Quarter. Now, 7th grade was almost over, and something had changed. Like Hurricane Katrina, causing the water to shift and transform the land, the bond between the three girls had weakened. It had started last autumn with Greer and the accident. All right, and then prior to chapter 1, we get a date here, which is April 2018. Chapter 1 is titled Greer. Greer's little sister claimed she wanted to be an architect, but Darby could change her mind a million times. She was only 7. A lot of things change, even in half of a year. 6 months ago, Greer was a track star at Spanish Oaks Charter Middle School. She was ranked number 2 with only Megan Williams ahead of her. No one could touch Megan. She ran like a kite that had been let loose on a gusty day, gliding across the sky, not stopping until it reached a tree. Even now, Greer sometimes dreamed of watching the soles of Megan's Nikes sprinting toward the finish line. Greer lost that number 2 spot because she didn't run anymore. Hadn't for a long time. Didn't even want to. That October, Greer had run every afternoon getting ready for the first big track tournament at the beginning of the school year. She pushed herself a little harder every day, not caring if any other team won. There was only one thing she'd wanted more than anything in the world, and that was to beat Megan Williams. Just once, Greer wanted to be the number 1 runner on the Spanish Oaks Charter Middle School track team. The tournament had been a week away, and she needed to build up her stamina. She'd made the plan a month before, entering it into the calendar on her phone. One Sunday, Greer had laced up her running shoes and was about to leave when her mother met her at the front door. "That run will have to wait," she said. "We need to head out, so you'll have to watch Darby." They were leaving for the annual fundraising event at the Casablanca, her dad's movie theater. Greer snapped, "I'm training." "Babysitting Darby would screw up everything. Why can't you take her with you?" Her dad stared away, but her mother said, "You can train tomorrow." "I am, and I can't miss one day. Can't you leave a little later?" Her mother ignored her question. "We'll be back late. There's jambalaya from last night in the fridge." Her dad gave her an apologetic look. Then they left. From the first floor, Greer called up to Darby, who was in her bedroom. 10 seconds later, Greer yelled to her again. Darby appeared and leaned over the railing. "What's wrong?" "You're coming with me. I have to run." "Am I going to run?" Darby always wanted to tag along. "No, you'll ride your bike. Now get your helmet." "But I can run fast." "You're going to ride your bike." Greer felt mean. It wasn't Darby's fault, but Greer needed to train if she was ever going to beat Megan. With Darby along, she wouldn't be able to run her regular route toward the Harvey Canal. She liked making water her destination. It was such a part of her life. The Harvey Canal was a mile away, and narrow Bayou Fatma snaked behind the back of the houses on her street. Even the Mississippi River was only a few miles as the crow flies from Greer's front door. Most of the homes in her neighborhood were built in the 1970s and shared the same floor plan. Greer's dad joked that whenever they visited neighbors, he never had to ask where the bathroom was. After Darby fastened her helmet on, Greer took off and focused on each landmark as she reached it. The Simmons' house at the turn, the enormous red rose shrub midway down Matador, the yard dotted with a million gnomes. She glanced at her watch, then reminded herself this was her long run. This day was about stamina, not speed. But that meant going right on Apollo and crossing to the median on Lapalco Boulevard. Greer glanced back at her little sister. Darby was leaning forward, her skinny legs pedaling hard. The bike was almost too small for her. Her knees barely missed the handlebars. That and her green helmet made Greer think of a determined turtle racing its way across a road. She knew she shouldn't turn right, but she did. Greer remembered thinking that she should slow down, but she knew Darby was behind her. She could hear the flapping sounds of the playing cards Darby had attached to her spokes with clothespins after their grandmother had told her she'd done that as a kid. Darby complained, "My legs hurt. Can we stop for a break?" "No," Greer hollered, not bothering to glance back. Then a few moments later, as they exited the neighborhood, she started to consider shortening the run. They'd reached Lapalco Boulevard. Lapalco was a busy 4-lane street with a grassy median strip where Greer ran. Riding a bike on it would be difficult, but this was Greer's route. As they waited for the light, she made a quick decision. "Wait for me by that tree." Greer was almost at the turnaround spot, and she would be able to see Darby, even though it would mean glancing back often. The light changed, and they crossed the median. Darby got off her bike and settled next to the tree's trunk. "Can I have a snowball later?" "They aren't open." Greer took off again. She hollered back, "Be ready to go when you see me coming back your way." Fueled by anger, Greer sped up. She felt a surge of energy as her shoes smacked the ground. If Darby wasn't with her, she would have made it to the Harvey Canal Bridge. She'd secretly done it before, but with Darby it would have been too dangerous. Usually, her mind was occupied by the run, the steps, the time, her breathing, but that day she couldn't concentrate. She'd hated being grumpy to Darby. After they got back home, Greer would make it up to her, give her 2 scoops of ice cream, maybe 3. Was there any cookie dough ice cream left in the freezer? She hoped so. Greer shifted her focus to the turnaround spot, the insurance office and the 2-story white colonial that looked so out of place among the stretch of retail shopping centers. 2 flags flew in the yard, a U.S. flag and a Louisiana one. Greer focused on the Louisiana flag's pelican beak like she always did. Almost there, just a few steps away. Then, down the street, a pickup truck came swerving. Another car sounded the horn after almost getting sideswiped. Greer moved to the left of the median strip in case the car jumped the curb. The driver was out of control. Then Greer gasped and turned. Darby! She'd forgotten about her, only for a moment. For a moment, she'd been out there alone, running in the direction of the canal. How could she have forgotten? Greer's head turned back toward the direction of the canal like she didn't want to see, as if not seeing could keep anything bad from happening. Then she turned back again, facing the tree. What happened next went so quickly, yet when she replayed the moment in her head, she saw it in slow motion. Like a slide presentation, clicking quickly, the truck swerving into the U-turn near her sister, the tires screeching to a stop, Darby's legs beneath them. The jack of hearts card inches from her fingers, the ambulance lights. That one tiny moment that she'd forgotten she was supposed to be watching her. If only she'd turned left on Apollo instead of right. Maybe if she'd remembered, somehow Darby wouldn't be in the condition she was in. A life using a wheelchair. No, that wouldn't have stopped the car. If only she'd stayed home. If. Her head rattled with the word, if. Even now, 6 months later, thinking about that moment, Greer felt nauseous, and sweat broke out on her forehead. The same question still haunted her. Why couldn't the truck have run over her instead? Why couldn't she be the one who couldn't walk? Greer believed with every bone in her body it should have been that way. At the hospital, her mother had yelled, "You were supposed to be watching your little sister, not running." Everyone, even her best friends, Joya Mia and Kiki, knew. The accident had been her fault. Whew. Well, that was a really intense first chapter. I had goosebumps for quite a lot of it. I cannot imagine what our main character is going through. That is a lot of guilt and responsibility to have on your shoulders. On a lighter note, if you enjoyed this First Chapter Friday Read Aloud, please consider liking and subscribing so you can be notified every time we have another First Chapter Friday Read Aloud available for you. And until next time, friends, happy reading.